Clear here with the Monday race of the day for the Daily Racing Form. It's race number 10 at Mahoning Valley, the $300,000 Steel Valley Sprint, 6 furlongs on the main track. And Mike, I thought this was a pretty good edition of this race. I know the purse has kind of gone up in more recent years, and this is a bigger day of racing. I think this is one of 5 stakes races on the card, but there's some big names in here for 300,000.
Yeah, it's a really good race. I feel like this race has come up pretty strong the last couple of years as well, and this year is no exception. There are some good horses shipping in to try for this big purse.
Yeah, and some of those horses being uncashed. We even have horses like Damon's Mound, who I think, we kind of forgot about for a little bit. He was so hyped up early in his career, and maybe he fell to the wayside, but he's been able to regain his recent form. He's 5-2 on the morning line.
Yeah, he's your morning line favorite. He's coming off of back-to-back wins, including a Grade 2 win last time. He has caught several wet tracks recently, but I don't really feel like that's necessarily what moved him up.
And don't forget, with this being the race of the day for this Monday on November 20th, you can get free formulator by clicking. A great tool and resource here. So let's dive right into this field of 10 with the number 1 Frosted Departure. He's a horse that, he's 0 for 8 on the year. And in terms of the pace here that we're going to look at, Mike, I'm curious to get your thoughts. More recently, in his last out and 3 starts back, he's been pretty close to hot paces, but here you're going to see he's going to have that late pace flag attached to him.
Yeah, I didn't see him when I went through the race. I know that there's some pace in this race for sure. I didn't really see him getting outrun early by these horses, but maybe that'll be the case. I think he's fast enough though to avoid getting too far away early on in this race. I get that he doesn't win very often. I've always looked at him as a horse. They tried to stretch him out, towards the end of last year, earlier this year. It didn't really work out for him. I've always thought he was better going shorter. I think he's starting to show that now. I think he's a major contender in this race.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pace here, just looking at some of the other horses, the uncashed draws to the outside. When he's sharp out of the gate, he's been pretty much lights out several times now, a 5-time winner from 7 races in his career. And then you can see Meadow Value. Yes, they went fast, but it was 5.5. It was on debut. This one was a runaway winner, but obviously the water is going to be very different. That's a 12-5 maiden claimer, now coming for a $300,000 race.
Yeah, I mean, I'll disagree a little bit, I guess, with this pace projector. I don't see any way that the 3 is part of this pace with this field coming out of a 12-5 maiden claiming win. Uncashed is really fast. The 4 Rivet is really fast. There are some other horses with speed in here. I do think this pace could get heated up a little bit for sure.
We'll dive in. We've touched upon the number 1 Frosted Departure a little bit. As we've mentioned, hasn't been a win machine in 2023, but has had some really solid performances. And I thought the race, even 3 back and more recently, this horse was right there every step of the way. And these are the horses that I think, when you think of Kenny McPeak, they kind of fly under the radar when they're ready to shine. I think a lot of people sleep on them. They don't wager.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I like that they've sort of concentrated on shorter races with him now. I'll forget about that turf race 2 starts back. I think that was just an experiment and he didn't really like it that much. But his dirt form surrounding it's really good. To me, going back to that Keelan race last time, to me, he was best in that race. And that trip did not work out. It was kind of the rider's fault a little bit, the way that I view racing anyway. But this horse ran really well in there. And if he can get that kind of a trip in this race, I think he could be right there at the wire.
The number 2, Damon's Mound, as I mentioned earlier, has kind of rekindled some of the form that he flashed early on his career when he was able to win on debut and then won again in the Grade 2 Saratoga Special. And I wonder if part of that has been Junior Alvarado. He's been aboard for those last 2. He's been able to get this horse forwardly placed, but just sitting off the pace setters to make that one late run. And I saw his performance at Charlestown, and, I kind of slept on him in that spot. I said, there's no way he's going to be able to beat a couple of the others in there, but he was able to do it and then followed that up with a really nice win at Parks that we'll take a look at. These conditions, Mike, are never easy to kind of run on, especially in a horse that he hadn't fared well over a wet track in the past, but he's going to end up drawing clear here pretty nicely.
Yeah, he is. I like the way he finishes in this race. I also like the trip that he got overall. That's maybe the key takeaway from his most recent performances anyway. If this pace is fast, this horse could just be in a perfect spot as this field comes into the stretch, sort of sitting just off the leaders. And that's going to really make it tough. Again, I know he's been on wet tracks recently. I don't think he's a wet track move up. So a fast track isn't going to hurt this horse. And he just might fall into a really good trip in this race.
And obviously this race is for 3-year-olds in general, but the horse that has the least experience is the number 3 Meadow Value. This one in the Michelle Elliott barn was a runaway winner on debut, but it's just tough for me, Mike, to make a case coming out of that maiden claiming event.
Yeah, he's in a really, really tough field here. And listen, maybe I'm just totally wrong about how fast this horse is, but to me, there's no way he gets anywhere near the lead in this spot. And I thought it was hard to make a case for him.
The number 4, Rivet, has had a good season in 2023, but those races are a little bit behind him. He kind of maybe topped off at the summer months in his last 3. Hasn't been able to get going, but I'm curious, Mike, do you think it's a lot to do with the spots that he was in and maybe the track conditions, or what do you think kind of is the reason for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a more of an excuse for him because I'm a fan of this horse. I really liked what he was doing earlier this year. He's really tailed off. I don't know that you can give him the wet track excuse because, 4 starts back at Ellis Park, he handled the wet track just fine, winning with a 93 buyer. I don't really know what to say about him. I'm concerned that he's tailed off. That being said, he's 8-1 on the morning line. I know he's good enough to beat this field if he shows up with his good race.
I guess the local runner here is the number 5, Agnello's Dream. This is a horse who's been kind of in these races for 3-year-olds and upward against, I guess, tougher allowance, optional claiming event, or conditioned allowance races, and was able to pick up a win, but he's just 1 for 12 this year as a 3-year-old and enters this race off a 4th place finish locally.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where you feel like maybe these connections entered just to want to see how this race came up, and now they see the field that's shipping in. Maybe they don't want to run here anymore.
The number 6, Recruiter, going to race with blinkers off, just making that first start since August 5th at Monmouth, where he raced in the Jersey Shore, and he was the pace setter, but he kind of took some heat early on and surrendered late to finish 3rd.
Yeah, he's just one of those horses who hasn't really gone on yet as a 3-year-old. We'll see if maybe they can start finding the right spots for him. It was a step in the right direction last time, to be sure, but this horse started out 4 for 4 as a 2-year-old, like he was actually going to be pretty good, but he just hasn't progressed since then.
We talked about Kenny McPeek's runner maybe being sneaky in here. I think the same thing could be said about the number 7, Nautical Star. When Saffie Joseph Jr. takes these horses on a little bit of a road trip, he's had success. One of those things that I think of is Skippy Longstocking at Charlestown, that sort of horse. And Nautical Star, he's lightly raced, just 5 starts under his belt. And last time out, I thought he raced pretty well to finish 2nd behind Damon's Mound.
I did too. I thought he ran well in that race. I liked his return off the layoff on another wet track, 2 starts back. I even liked his first two starts for a different trainer down at Oaklawn. So I think there's something there with this horse. I don't think he's in over his head against this field. The more I looked at it and I saw him at 7-2 on the morning line, maybe that's a little bit of the Irad Ortiz money, but I don't think I would take that price on him against this field.
The number 8, Super Chow, was a pretty impressive 2-year-old, 4 for 5 in his career. A lot of those races being down at Gulfstream Park. And it just seems now as a 3-year-old, especially in his last couple, we'll take a look at the race 2 back, the Jersey Shore. Maybe just not the same level. You think about maybe some of it's just been getting older. We know horses from 2 to 3, it can be a tough move. And I think this is an okay performance, but he's not going to be able to beat Swervin.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see his excuse in this race. He's just one of those horses, another one who, to me anyway, hasn't gotten any better. He started out his career just fine, winning a bunch of stakes races. Just hasn't really gotten better as his 3-year-old campaign has gone on. I don't know. You and I talked about him a little bit off air, Ashley. I'm not much of a fan of this horse and didn't really want to bet him against this field.
No, and I also just wonder, with having that tough campaign of being a speedy 2-year-old in sprints, if that takes a toll on a horse a little bit, and sometimes they lose that edge. And to me, he doesn't have the fight that he needs in the stretch. So I'm not a huge fan of Super Chow, and I'm not a huge fan of him in the spot. Just seeing what he's shown as a 3-year-old just hasn't done it for me. Now, number 9, Homestead here. This one, the Lance Rutledge barn, is crossing in another spot at Churchill Downs, but talk about a horse that kind of woke up. Maybe it was Keeneland, or maybe it just was the dirt in general. We'll take a look at that performance last time out. Is going to get an 89 buyer speed figure for this pretty easy win going 3/4.
Yeah, I like this performance from this horse. He's clearly upped his game since they've gotten him over to the dirt courses. Even the race 2 starts back when he was only 2nd. He ran well in that spot too, I thought, going 7. He's one of the horses in here who's obviously got a lot to prove. He's in a really tough spot here, giving away some experience, but at the 12-1 morning line or higher, if he decides to run here, I could use this horse.
Then rounding out the field, the number 10, Uncashed. This one trained by Larry Ravelli for Patricia's Pope LLC. Didn't take to the turf last time out at Saratoga, but Mike, I mean, how do you knock him? If this horse gets clear, he could certainly get loose and could have a big shot in the end.
His dirt races are really, really good. I sort of understand why they wanted to take a shot on turf last time. There's a little bit of turf pedigree in there, but it clearly didn't work out on that surface. Forget about that one and judge him off of what he'd been doing on dirt prior to that. And this horse is supposed to be pretty tough in here, especially if, listen, maybe he's not fast enough to clear from the outside post, but this horse is very fast early.
And I just think it's interesting to see him start at Louisiana Downs. He gets an 82 buyer. He goes off at 14-1. and to see him work his way up with his most recent win being the quick call at Saratoga, it was moved to the main track. He's an interesting horse, had a 96 buyer in that most recent victory 2 back, but a big field here of 10 for the Steel Valley Sprint. And in terms of our top picks here in top pick time, I went to the 2 Damon's Mount. I mentioned, I kind of forgot about him for a little bit. He was so hyped after his first 2 wins and he fell a little bit to the wayside. And it just seems like now he's a horse that's really improved from 2 to 3.
I think he might be the horse to beat in this race. As far as the shorter prices go, I kind of preferred Uncast to the outside. I feel like Uncast is just a really fast horse and could make the lead in here. That being said, I wanted to try somebody else in here. I went with Frosted Departure on top. I do think he can get the right trip in here. If this pace is fast, I think it's only going to help this horse. I know it looked like he regressed last time. I think it's one of the better races that he's ever run.
I think he's sneaky. He's 8-1 on the morning line. I wouldn't be surprised just knowing that the 2, the 10, and probably the 7 here are going to take some love in terms of tote action. So you might be able to get a good price on the Kenny McPeak trainee, the number 1 Frosted Departure. You go 1-10 for 2 here. I'm going to go 2-10, 7-1 is my top selections here. And what seems to be a great addition of the Steel Valley Sprint. Don't forget, this is one of 5 stakes races at Mahoning Valley on Monday. Good luck.